Welcome, everyone. It's good to have you. We're going to have some fun today. This meeting will be recorded and posted to the OATS website and YouTube channel for the benefit of those who could not attend live. So just be aware, and all the past episodes are recorded there on YouTube as well. Welcome to the Organic Advisor Call Series. I'm your host, Sam Oschwald Tilton, and I'm the training specialist with OATS and an independent organic advisor through my business, Glacial Drift Enterprises. This series is brought to you by the Organic Agronomy Training Service and Albert Lee Seed House. Albert Lee is a fourth-generation, family-owned, independent farm seed company with a full line of organic and non-GMO field crop seed and knowledgeable reps. Thank you to Albert Lee for their support of this series, and we'll put a link to their website in the chat now if you want to learn more. The episode is also supported through the United States Department of Ag Transition to Organic Partnership Program, TOPP. TOPP's a program of the USDA Organic Transition Initiative, and it's administered by the USDA Ag Marketing Service and National Organic Program. So happy for all the support that makes this happen. Now, who is OATS? OATS is governed by a consortium of universities, agronomists, crop consultants, nonprofit educators, and industry reps from throughout the country, and it's fiscally sponsored by the Organic Trade Association. These partnerships are the core of the OATS mission and are also a lot of fun working with all sorts of different experienced people. OATS provides science-based training for ag advisors. We're a collaboratively managed training program for ag advisors who work with organic farmers, transitioning farmers, and organic curious farmers. And we help to grow the domestic organic supply by strengthening the educational support network for agronomists, certified crop advisors, extension agents, and technical service providers, all the people that farmers kind of can rely on. Our aim is for every transitional and certified organic farmer to have robust access to technical service expertise that provides unbiased, science-based agronomic support for their farming operation. This is the fourth episode of this season, and there are two whole past seasons of the series available on YouTube. And in the chat here, we'll put the link to the YouTube channel should you want to see some of the past episodes. OATS runs in-person training events, virtual courses, and publishes all manner of resources throughout the year. And in fact, we have just worked on releasing fact sheets and videos focused on organic grain issues. And you can find all those in the newly launched resources library. And if you like, we'll put the link to that in the chat now too. Okay, if you haven't done so already, I highly recommend keeping up on all this by signing up for the OATS newsletter. And you can do that by going to organicagronomy.org/subscribe. We'll put that in the chat too. And finally, your feedback's important so that we know how we're doing and we get direction on bringing you the exact information that you want to know. So we'll do a brief poll before the episode. It's only 3 questions, and then we'll do a short survey after. And that really helps us know, what did you want to learn and did you learn what you came here for? So if you want, go ahead and click on that. I think it's 3 questions. Okay, that's it for housekeeping. Let's get started with today's discussion. And our guests today, we're very lucky to have Matthew Fitzgerald in from the field and Mallory Krieger. Matthew grew up on his family's organic farm in Minnesota and has been a partner over the last several years there. They grow corn, soy, edible beans, and wheat. And Matthew's helped diversify their crop rotation and implement new technology into the operations. He's also a certified organic inspector with International Organic Inspectors Association. And he's the founder of FarmFlow, a software startup focused on farm management for organic farmers. So we're happy to have Matthew today. Matthew, thanks a lot for joining us.
Hey, really excited to be with everyone.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I really appreciate on the Organic Advisor Call Series is a variety of perspectives. And so we're also lucky to have Mallory Krieger, who's also an IOIA-trained organic inspector in Illinois. And Mallory operates an organic record-keeping service for organic farmers through her business, Terrarosa LLC. And she's also the program director for OATS, the Organic Agronomy Training Service. And in addition to her consulting work, Mallory owns and manages an 85-acre farm in Western Illinois. So Mallory, thanks for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're lucky to have people tuning in from around the Midwest and also around the country. And I assume you're tuning in today because you want to learn something. So as we're talking, please share your questions in the chat. I'll do my best to pose those to our guests. And I'll try to save 10 minutes at the end where we can kind of ask questions. But no guarantees since time flies when we're talking ag. So please do put those questions in the chat and I'll get to them as much as I can. Okay, with all those introductions out of the way, let's talk about organic record keeping. And I thought it might be good to kind of start with the big picture and then sort of dive into the details. And so I wanted to start with Matthew. Matthew, when we talked earlier, you told me that you think of organic records in kind of two buckets or categories that also correspond to the different seasons when they're often kept. Can you tell us about how do you think of the categories of organic records and how they get recorded?
Yeah, there's sort of what you plan to do, and then there's what actually happens, which is how most things in life go, whether it's giving a presentation or preparing for your organic inspection. So
Wait, but this call is going to go exactly as planned, right?
yeah, it'll go exactly as planned. So at least on our farm, our certification cycle happens over the winter. So we are renewing our organic certification sometime in January, February, preparing plans for the year. And this is a communication with our third-party certifier. In our case, we work with OCIA, and we lay out the plan for the year. We identify what fields, what crop rotations, what's going to happen there. And so we make our best plan, and we share all that information with our certifier. As much detail as possible based on what they're requesting from us. And there's a back and forth process, maybe a couple of clarifications, and then we get an approval that says, yep, this looks like a good plan. Fitzgerald Organics, you can move forward. The starting gun goes off, it warms up, sun comes out, snow melts, and then chaos happens. So that's where the hard part happens. I think most folks can get comfortable with the paperwork of getting prepared and planning. Very similar to FSA or any of the kind of other programmatic record keeping that happens for whatever business you're involved with. What happens during the season is the difficult part. So daily records. What happened where? Did you catch all the paperwork for your seed that got planted? You're maybe delivering grain. Did you have the paperwork for every single truck that left the farm and the scale ticket for it? Maybe you tried a new product. You wanted to change something in the middle of the season and it wasn't in your plan back in January. You have to remember to be in communication with what's happening during the growing season. And that's where a lot of folks get caught up because June is crazy on a farm. And so that's really the difficulty in those two different things. And so
Okay.
when those two things come together, it's during the inspection. So every year on farm, somebody comes to our farm and checks to see, this is what you said you did, what actually happened. And so that's the inspection moment that happens.
Okay. Yeah, that was helpful for me to think about. You've got the winter, and that's maybe a little more able to be planned for, and then you've got the in-season kind of oh shit moments, but you still got to organize all that. Mallory, could you say more? When you and I were chatting, I thought you had a good idea of kind of, for me at least, it gets scary, all the tiny bits of information to keep track of. And you had some kind of big picture principles that can kind of guide, like, okay, what are ways to organize this, especially from your perspective as an inspector, like that work and doesn't make your inspector pull out their hair. Yeah, like what are big picture organizational principles that you've seen farmers use?
Yeah, so there's many different ways that a farm can organize their records. And one of the messages I want advisors to take to their clients and farmers to know is whatever system you use, it just needs to work for you. And so start with what you already have in place and build from there. The certifiers are required to audit the records that you have. They cannot prescribe to you exactly how you keep your records. So how you organize them, what filing system you use, whether you use electronic or paper. The only requirement is that your records are complete enough to be able to show the full picture of certification. So all of your field history, all of your inputs, all of your seeds that you used, etc. And then that system needs to be readily auditable by an inspector on site during business hours. So regular business hours are when it has to be readily auditable. So if an inspector comes out to your farm, are they able to make sense of the system that you have in place? And really what it all comes down to is traceability. You need to be able to trace from seed to sale. So for every field of production. And so the records that you keep need to tell the full story of what you planted, where you planted it, and how you got that crop raised and sold. So each time that you went into the field, the activity that you did, whether it is tine weeding, or whether it is planting, or whether it is row cultivation, logging those, your equipment cleanouts, did you use a custom operator, and did you receive an equipment cleanout affidavit from them? How was your crop harvested? On what date? Where was it stored? Where was it sold? And all of the records that provide the traceability of that product moving through your farm to the next destination where you sold it.
Okay. And it's helpful for me to think about those kind of twin pillars of auditability and traceability. And kind of like the statutes don't say how you have to keep your records, they just have to be auditable and traceable. Can you give some examples from the wide variety of farms you visited? What are the different examples of farm records that you've seen that are still successful, but can be all sorts of ways that are still auditable and traceable at whatever kind of level of technology they're at?
Yeah, so starting at kind of the most analog, least digital option, I saw farms that used spiral bound notebook for everything. There was one farmer who had a spiral bound notebook, and it was a field activity log, it was his planting log, and he even would staple his seed tags into the spiral bound notebook. So at the end of the season, everything was there. His scale tickets, his seed tags, his bills of lading, etc. And it was all stapled essentially in chronological order. That was readily auditable. It wasn't, for me as the inspector, the fastest system, because I would have to do a lot of page turning back and forth to look at different fields, to look at different crops. But it was entirely readily auditable. I also inspected farms that used kind of a hybrid approach where they had a pen and pencil in the truck or in the tractor to write down those records that are happening on the fly, like when they enter the field to do a weed control pass, or when they are loading the planter, or when they did an equipment clean out. But then also used documents like Word documents, Excel documents, Dropbox or Google Drive for storing files, where they uploaded and organized their files, especially things that they got electronically, like say they had a purchase contract for like a forward contract for some corn. They would have the contract stored in there, or they would upload pictures that they took from their phones into their file management system to be able to show that they did a clean out. I'll say photographs are an absolutely excellent way to capture information on the fly during the season. Like Matthew said, things just it's chaos during the season. And so if you have a smartphone that provides the geotag information for the pictures that you take, you have a timestamp and you have a location, and then you have an activity that can serve as a record for your inspector. But most importantly, it serves as a record for you to be able to go into your record keeping system during the downtime, when it is quieter, when you can fill out your field activity log form that you're using for each field. You just go back through your photos and be like, that's right, I cleaned out the combine on that date, and it was for this field because that's where I'm at. And then your farms have even more sophisticated platforms available to them. There are a number of different record keeping services. I know we're going to get to talk about Matthew's that he's putting together, which is an excellent service that will be coming out in the near future. But some of them are systems that you probably already have in place on the farm, like your accounting software, like QuickBooks, like your planting monitors and yield monitors in the combine, like John Deere Operations Center and the other equivalent platforms for other equipment lines. Climate Field View, I'm not in any way affiliated with them, but as an inspector, I loved being able to see the data in Climate Field View because it's organized by field, the variety that's planted, the seeding rate, the input applications, the harvest, the yield monitoring,
Yeah.
it's all already there. And so as an inspector, it was very quick and easy for me to go in and find the information I needed to conduct the mass balance and traceability exercises that we have to do at each inspection.
So I was actually about to ask a different question in terms of our plan, but you just said mass balance. And I feel like that's a helpful way to understand the auditability and the traceability. Could you just say a few more about mass balance and maybe to keep it simple, like on a grain farm, what that looks like? What is mass balance? And as an inspector, what are you looking for?
Yeah. So at every inspection, in addition to walking around and seeing each of the fields and verifying what's planted in them and looking at all of the records, we also have to conduct two tests. One is called the mass balance and one is called the traceability or the traceback audit. The mass balance is looking at your inventory of the product that you create. And so at an inspection, the inspector will select one of your organic products. So let's say that it's a corn, soybean, and wheat rotation. And they can say, I'm going to look at corn for 2024. So they're looking at one period of time, one growing season, and for one total crop. So not a field, but the total product that was generated on that farm. So all the corn raised across all 6 cornfields that year. And so the mass balance is looking at how much corn did you have in inventory at the beginning of the time period in question. So say it's the beginning of the farm season. So that could be last year's harvest that's still sitting in the bin. That could also be seeds for planting that you've received from your seed supplier already at the beginning of the season. Then you look at what product was created on the farm. So this would be what you grew and harvested. So what you produced. And then it looks at what left of the farm. So starting your beginning inventory and what you produced is how much the maximum amount that you would have ever had possession of is. And then what left the farm. And there's many different ways that product can leave the farm. The most obvious is sales, that you sold, but you could also feed. So say you have livestock and you fed livestock some of your corn. You can also dispose of it because say it's spoiled or it shrunk through drying processes. So loss and shrink count toward the reduction in inventory during the year. And then, so once you've taken the beginning inventory, added what you produced, subtracted what left the farm through sales, feed, shrink, loss, then that's what the ending inventory that should be present on the farm on the day of inspection. And so as an inspector, I would go out and I would look and I would see, does this farm have the correct number of bushels of corn in storage or in seed bags from leftover seed? That's all part of the mass balance for corn. And I'm looking for two things. One, does the mass balance? And two, are the amounts reasonable for what could have been produced on that farm? So it's a fraud detection tool to see whether what was said to be produced was reasonable and actually happened.
And is that something like, let's say the county average for corn is 150 bushel an acre, and with what they have on hand, they would have had to produce at like 350 bushel an acre. All of a sudden, like what, there's some bells going off, like what's going on?
Absolutely. And so it's looking at the production side, but it's also looking at inventory changes, because another way that inventory can change is purchase. So let's say that a farmer farms alongside his father, and he bought some, say he had a contract that he needed to fill and he was a little short, his father had some extra, so he bought some corn in. That could also be another way where it's like, yeah, he sold a lot more than he produced, but the records are there because of the purchase logs that it was added to the inventory in a legitimate manner. Like a way that is not organic fraud, a way that is just normal, good business practices.
Okay, so in terms of the big picture, we start out and Matthew's saying, okay, we got two kind of buckets of, in the winter, what's your plan? You got to have that down. In the season, what actually happened? You got to, by hook or by crook, notebook, pictures, have some shoebox full of receipts, something somewhere so that you can, make sense of it. Then Mallory's telling us about whatever you do, it's got to be traceable, it's got to be auditable, and the inspector has to be able to do a mass balance. Okay, and then Matthew, can you kind of make the rubber hit the road? Like, growing up on an organic farm, I imagine you guys have had, a lot of iterations or hopefully some improvements of your record keeping. When I came to your farm, I think last year for that field day, I saw your giant whiteboard in the shop, and I was just blown away. I hadn't seen that before. Yeah, could you kind of walk us through? And I think we got a little bit of time, take some time, but walk us through like what are the iterations of record keeping on your farm over time? Yeah.
Great. And I might just build off of what Mallory was saying here. There's two emotional sensations that happen when we talk about record keeping. One is like, for me, it feels like the night before the science fair project is due and you're scrambling and there's a lot of stress. And the other part is like my eyes start to glaze over because I feel like I'm at the DMV line, kind of waiting for all these boxes to check. And I'm like, oh my God. What it really requires, I think, is to have a mindset about record keeping. Like, why are we doing it? And this was what Mallory was highlighting as the fraud. So organics for our family farm means that we're able to support multiple households, that we're able to be economically viable. And that's based around the premium for our product. That premium only exists if the consumer feels like, hey, what I'm buying is worth it. And they feel like it's worth it because they know that there's something behind it. And the something behind it ultimately is this audit process. So I have to think about this record keeping and paperwork not as something that I have to do, but something that is part of building value for my crop. So
forgive me. Sorry, that was really helpful for me. I just want to highlight that mindset, the importance of a mindset over the nuts and the bolts or the why.
Yeah, because otherwise you just like you drag your feet, it sucks. I hate doing this. It's so stressful, da 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 da. But if I think, oh, if I do this, I literally double the value of my business. Or if I do this, when my friends and family go and buy organic product at the farmer's market and at the grocery store and they feel good about it, I've done my part. Like that helps take care of that like DMV or science fair project feeling. So just like it's a lot of work. So you just have to have a mindset about it. It's like, why are we doing this? And that, for me at least, reduces the frustration or the eyeball glazing that happens a little bit. So I'll just start there. So like if you're coaching the folks that are advisors or supporters of organic farmers, like coach them about why it's important and that it's driving value to like their revenue and to the consumer. And if you're a farmer yourself and you're doing it, just remember it's not because you have to, but because you get to. So
well put.
Okay, let's talk about like our evolution. So we've been farming organically for 25 years, and certainly for the first 15 of those, it's been a notebook. So, we're slowly evolving. I'm just gonna remove the filter on my camera here and kind of talk through our process. So we'll start with like paper, medium digital, and then where we are headed for like high level digital. Let's see if I can figure out how to turn off my filter. There we go. So let's start with old school paper, which is, as Mallory said, totally legitimate. You can write everything on the back of a seed bag and nail it to your wall, and it would be legit. So like,
but Mallory won't be happy.
No shame.
She'll do it, but she won't be happy.
I want to just add in really quick. If it isn't written down, it didn't happen from an inspector standpoint. But if it's written on the back of a seed tag, it counts.
Yeah. So when we start out paper inspection on our farm, let's say roughly 2,500 acres, that's like an 8-hour deal to do that. Where we are today is it takes about 2 to do it. So by evolving our process, we've really accelerated the inspection point in a way that's fair for everybody. It's really transparent, it's really clean, but it's also faster, and it just goes so much better. So that's really the motivation for like this evolution from the seed bag to where we are today. So the really lo-fi is we have a giant like accounting calendar, a 24 by 24 inch calendar that's slapped up on the wall, and we're just writing on it every day. What happened? Shipped 4 loads of grain, planted the home farm 80, planted 84.95 corn. Boom. We still do that actually because it's just super simple. It's fail safe. Here's my big old shoebox. So when we are shipping grain, we are producing paper bill of ladings with a record of uh, where it's going to, how much did we ship, what was the contract number, and everything else. Sam's got a copy of this and he'll email it out. This is just a Word document that you can print off 500 copies of and fill it out for yourself. So those are like two really simple paperwork tools. Is like buy off of your office supply store or Amazon a 24 by 24 inch annual calendar and write literally every day what's happening. And then print off, 500 copies of these pieces of paper, fill them out as you're shipping grain. And that's a really lo-fi way to do record keeping. And I'm oversimplifying, but that's what you need to do. We'll move up the food chain a little bit. So behind me is a giant whiteboard, lots of little colors and dots, and it's kind of hard to see. But what I have is a magnetic whiteboard with individual pins. These pins represent different activities on our farm. And top to bottom are fields. So each row is a different field in our farm. And then left to right, each little square is a day. So we're representing time and activity with colors. And so we use this tool both for planning and for record keeping. So we'll lay out the whole year kind of based on what we think is going to happen. When we're going to plant, when we're going to time, we sequence the activity of work. And we'll plan that out with small pins, small magnetic pins. Each color represents a certain type of activity. So if you squint, you can see some green color, that's planting. You see some red, that's row crop cultivating. Some orange, that's rotary hoeing. So we have a plan for the year, and we use this tool every single day. When we start a day, the team gathers around, we look at the whiteboard, and we can kind of see what's happening. What do we need to do next? What's the priority? And we can move those magnets around because life happens. It rains, a piece of equipment breaks, looks like there's a flush of giant ragweed that we need to go prioritize and take care of. This whiteboard is based around research that we did in our farm. So we crunched a bunch of numbers, had a friend who's a data analyst research all the different inputs on our farm. We studied crop rotation, planting date, rainfall, soil suitability rating. We also studied like the number of passes and the frequency of passes. So how often were we weeding? When we ran that regression, the number one variable on the impact on yield was the frequency of passes. So the gap between those color points. So in a corn farm, if I was in the field every 5 days or every 7 days, there was a 4 bushel yield advantage. I'll make that even simpler. The more often you're weeding, the better your crops are going to be. That's it. Don't worry about your micronutrients. Don't worry about, what variety you selected. Don't worry about did it rain or not. If you're in that field, you're going to have a better yield. This is what the whiteboard's all about. I think Sam's got a link to it on our website, tryfarmflow.com. We have a DIY kit.
I can drop that in.
So we have instructions on how to build this yourself. You could build this on, a painted wall. You could draw this on a big piece of cardboard. We have the material list. This is just a really nice way to visually represent that work that happens on your farm. It's a way to do your field logs that's analog, it's low tech, anybody can understand it, anybody can play around with it. So this is what FarmFlow is this primary concept of visually representing the work that has to happen on your farm day to day. What this also represents is everything that Mallory was talking about, those field activities. So what happened when and where? And so naturally, it'd be nice not to have to type this up because that's what we did for the first couple of years is took a photo of this. Maybe we typed it up in an Excel spreadsheet or on a Word document, took a couple hours to do, maybe, switch numbers around accidentally. Things can happen. So we're slowly moving from this medium level of tech thing to more of a high tech thing. And that's what we're calling FarmFlow. So we are building software around this concept of compliance. It's not certification, but it's the compliance. So all the pieces that go into that chaos after your plans. What happened where? How was it done? Who did it? Where did it go?
Matthew, could you just say a word, please, about the difference between compliance and certification?
Yep. So certification is, in my mind, kind of the official status. So that's something that a third-party group that has authority from the USDA offers. So the USDA has an organic standard. Independent certifiers create their own process for compliance. They go out to farms, interact with them, collect the information, and then offer certification or not. FarmFlow is not a certifier. We are not offering certification of organic status. What we are doing is helping all those processes, all that record keeping. What happened where, your seed tags, your shipment records, your clean out records, all the little details that Mallory was talking about are things that people get hung up on. And so our goal is to help catch the farm level details that you can give to your certifier that helps protect that premium and what reduces the stress and paperwork and time of all that. So it works for anybody, any certification. So I might just demo a little bit if that's all right.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
And I'll just mention to people, it's awesome to kind of have a test drive with Matthew. If you want, there's a whole FarmFlow website, and now or later you can learn more on the website.
All right. So we're going to hop over to Safari and go to FarmFlow. So today we're just going to look at the bill of lading process, because the FarmFlow does three things. It does task planning and the whiteboard component. It has a standard operating procedure tool. So like you may have a special way that you like to set your rotary hoe or your tine weeder on your farm. FarmFlow will help you write that process and spit it out so that you can share it with employees, share it with your neighbors, and exchange ideas back and forth. One of those big pain points for folks is all that paperwork, all these bill of ladings. So that's something we've heard when we've been talking to farmers. It's that they spend a lot of time trying to capture all that. So this is what we're building. We're calling it Tracy for traceability.
Nice.
It's just like when you do mobile deposit with your bank. So let's say I've got a new grain contract. I can click here, scan a photo. There's my grain contract. Click a photo of it, confirm. Maybe there's a couple pages. Maybe it's just a one-page contract. Continue. It's a grain contract. Scan it. Boom. We've pulled off the buyer, the crop, the price, and the volume. And we can assign it to a buyer, and it gets saved into our FarmFlow system. Great, because you might have 15 different contracts that you're juggling. Then it's time to actually ship that grain. I'm going to hit click create bill of lading. I'll choose a buyer, choose a crop and the amount that I'm shipping. So here, maybe we're delivering to Bonanza Bean 1,000 bushels of organic corn. Hit the document. We're going to confirm. We're going to automatically generate a lot number. So crop year, crop, buyer, and load number. Creates a traceable back to that mass balance that Mallory was talking about. We can go back through and document every single load. We can tell you which bin it came from. Maybe there's a reference number, some kind of other component they want to call out. Contract, description, who shipped it, where did it go, and how was it cleaned. So these are all parts that people maybe sometimes forget in their process. Boom, we generate a bill of lading, and you can either print it, you can share it with your buyer, you can download it, lots of ways, and then it'll be held in the FarmFlow repository. But this is kind of the evolution, so that we move from the shoebox to the phone. All of those models, all those methods are legitimate, and not everyone needs to use this thing. But what we're trying to do is just catch any of the hiccups that happen, because it's easy to forget details. And so we want to try and catch those, and especially those common places. So clean out records, especially like if you have transition in organic fields, or you have a split operation where you maybe have some conventional or chemically managed farms and some organic farms. That's part of the FarmFlow task management. So when you're moving from fields and maybe you're doing field cultivation in this field that's transition and going to organic, you got to clean it. And it's easy to forget those things when it's April 15th and it's 80 degrees and rain's coming in an hour. So that's what we're trying to do, is help farmers catch the details.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so if I heard you right, you said FarmFlow big picture does three things. Tax planning, oh darn it. Standard operating task. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you.
We're not HR block. Don't worry. We're not,
okay, good. I was looking. Okay, so task planning,
Yep.
Building standard operating procedures, and
Yep.
traceability with Tracy.
Yep.
And one thing that was really interesting to me about FarmFlow in terms of tech and AI, and for good or for bad, but in this
Yep.
case, I think for good, was the standard operating procedures and how FarmFlow can like connect farmers and
Yes.
like share information and level up. And can you talk about the sharing of information with, and I liked your example of like the rotary hoe. Yeah, can you
Yep.
talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, two things. One of the great things about the organic industry, it's very collaborative. So I fundamentally believe there's enough opportunity for everybody, and we need more production. So I want to see my neighbors be successful. I want to see them convert to organic. So I want to help other folks. So I think that's pervasive in the organic industry, is the spirit of like education and collaboration. It's a really important thing. The other thing is like we believe farmers trust farmers. So despite the good efforts of, land grant universities and extension and research projects, ultimately, if your neighbor calls and said, "Hey, this is what I do," that's what I'm going to trust. So building on those two things, we're building a tool, and we're calling it SOP, Standard Operating Procedure. And it's an interactive chatbot. So how do you capture the wisdom that you have in your farm and share it with others? And so you simply open up the SOP tool and you start talking to it, or it starts talking to you, and it might say, "Hey, what are you doing today?" "I'm setting my time leader." "Great. What stage is your crop? Could you take a photo of it? What's your primary goal?" And it goes back and forth asking questions. You can do voice to text, you can talk to it, you can type things, you can take photos or videos. And in this back and forth process, you capture all the nuances that are important to your farm. Because maybe your soil type is slightly different. Maybe you've got a sandier soil. Maybe you've got a type of weed that's really aggressive, and you need to be more aggressive with your time settings. Maybe you've developed a special practice where you like to go in two different directions at a certain angle. There are all these little farm level insights that farmers have that make them really successful. So you interact with this tool, comes back and forth, and it's going to generate an interactive SOP so that you could share it with employees, with apprentices, or with your neighbors. So the idea is that you can scale up either your own farm, so you could expand your acres or expand your production, or bring in hired help, or have that high school kid who's kind of a knucklehead learn how to do the thing that's important on your farm. Or maybe you want to help out your neighbor. Maybe you want to have that tailgate moment where you're leaning around talking about how you set your cultivator. You can simply share that SOP with them. So what it's enabling is farmer to farmer wisdom.
Would you say that's kind of like the long-term vision for FarmFlow, or maybe to use your term before, I don't know, like the mindset or the why of FarmFlow?
Yeah, our goal is to expand organic and sustainable regenerative practices in the US. So we're laser focused on making that happen.
Neat. Are you finding this conversation useful? Hit the thumbs up button to help others discover it too. And if you'd like more conversations like this, click subscribe and turn on the bell icon for notifications. Let me, I don't, there's two sides to a coin. And to me, what you just showed us was a very well organized, collaborative, clear way to keep records. And let me kind of look at the flip side of that coin, which is that I know you and Mallory have seen lots of examples of what doesn't work well. And I wonder if I could start with you, Mallory. What do you, what's an example? What's a common mistake you see a lot of growers make? Yeah, that kind of doesn't work well. From the farms you've been on, is there a common thing where you feel like people often get tripped up with record keeping?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few places as an inspector where I would see what I would consider to be kind of like gaps in the records, because that second exercise that I didn't talk about yet in much detail, the traceback audit, is what really shows where there's holes in the record keeping system. And so for a record keeping system to be compliant, to be readily auditable, there has to be some sort of identifying characteristic that connects each step in the process of production. So the seed tag that you plant has a lot number, and so in the field activity log, you write down what variety it was and what lot number what lot number was planted there. So then I can see that seed variety was the one that was actually planted in that specific field. So one big gap that I often saw was what happens to the grain after harvest. A lot of farms will harvest, say, corn from field 1, and then it either goes in one of two main places, straight to the buyer. So sometimes it is shipped straight out of the field. That may be going to a local elevator that accepts organic, but that's less common. Or it could just be right onto a truck that goes straight to the buyer. Or it goes to on-farm storage. And so when it leaves the field, not really a big problem because it's coming straight out of the combine and into the truck. And so whatever goes across that scale for that scale ticket is what was harvested from the field. But when grain is going to on-farm storage, oftentimes what I would receive from the farmer would be the scale ticket for 4, 5, 6, 8 months later. And that isn't evidence to me as an inspector of what was harvested from that field. That is evidence of what was sold. And so there's a gap in the record of what has come out of the field. Now, for farms that have a yield monitor on their combine, easily documented. What their yield monitor says is what was harvested. But a lot of farms either don't have yield monitors or they don't have them calibrated. And so the data is wildly inaccurate. And so what was in that storage for so long, like, did any of it get fed out? Did anything get added into that bin? Shared storage is a pretty common circumstance where multiple operations are sharing bins. It's multiple legal entities. It might be one family, but they're all sharing the same bins. And so dad's throwing some corn in there, and brother's throwing some corn in there, and sister's throwing some corn in there. What was sold out of that bin is not evidence of what was harvested from that field. And I have to know as an inspector what was harvested at the field level. And so that's a gap. So having even, it can be measured in whatever unit the farmer needs. It could be measured in the number of gravity wagons that they pulled out of that field. As long as I'm able to convert it to bushels during the inspection, then it's fine. Another gap is keeping a record of loss. So say you're harvesting organic hay, spoilage happens and it needs to just be, rolled out into a field and let to decompose or disposed of in a different way. So if the hay spoils, it is still a harvested organic crop and we need the record of what happened to it. And that's for that mass balance. So that way, I had a client once that had a lot of sprout in his stored wheat. And so he ended up having to dispose of a couple of feet in his bin of sprouted wheat, but everything else below it was usable. I needed a record of how much he estimated was disposed of because of spoilage or fed on the farm or used for the farms or for the household. If you're a produce farmer and you're also eating from your garden, that's absolutely allowed. You just got to record it. How much organic product was raised and where did it go? So a certain number of bushels of peaches went to the home for canning purposes. Another gap is purging for equipment cleanouts. So
and just for say what purging is real quick too.
Yeah, so when you're using shared equipment between non-organic use and organic use, the equipment must be cleaned out prior to going into the organic field. Some equipment like combines can be pretty challenging to thoroughly clean out. And so a common practice is to harvest a certain number of bushels of organic crop that goes through the combine to pull out any trapped grain, any trapped dust that is still inside of the combine system. And then that gets set aside and can be sold or used as a non-organic product. It can't be sold into the organic product, but it was organic crop that was raised. So that just needs to be recorded. 50 bushels were used as purge for equipment clean out and were sold at the elevator conventional. And that just needs to be reflected in the records. And then the final thing I just want to kind of reiterate that I've already said, but I really want to drive it home, is that in the record keeping system, each each identifying piece of information in the record has to connect one step back and one step forward. So one
Is
step
this the
back,
traceback you were saying?
this is the traceback, yeah.
Okay.
So the traceback audit is looking at the entire activity that happened in a field, from preparation for planting all the way to the sale of the product. And everything has to be tied back to a specific field, because organic is certified at the field level for production. Now this is different if it's a livestock farm, but we're talking about crop farms right now. So it's certified at the field level. It's about the land. And so there needs to be an identifying piece of information on each record to show the through line of connection. So Matthew was talking about bills of lading. Well, bills of lading have to do with the transport of the grain off of the farm. And so the bill of lading needs to somehow tie back to, say, the storage bin that the grain came out of. That's one step back. Or the field, if it's coming straight out of the field, tie back to the field that it came out of. And then all of the records that have to do with that field have that same field identifier. So that's the connector piece. Lot numbers are a way this is achieved, but then also just notes about what field or what bin it came from, so that it's kind of like detective work as an inspector. If I'm looking at
Yeah.
one truckload that went across the scale at the Goodfield elevator, and I look at that scale ticket, that it connects back to the bill of lading because there's an identifier that connects them. Then from the bill of lading, it goes back to what bin it came out of. And then I look at the bin record and I can see what fields went into that bin. Those are each of the connectors that allow me to tell the full story. If there's a lack of a connector, it's a break in the trace back, and it's failed the test.
Okay, so that's the way I think that's helpful for me, of like thinking of a chain, and we got to document each link at, like you said, forward and backward, and we can't have a break there. Okay. Matthew, I don't know if you have anything to add, but from your perspective, in the farmers you've worked with, would you say there's, a mistake that you tend to see people make, or a gap where you tend to see that chain break?
I think
And also, sorry, let me also ask the question that Fiona asked, which is, how do you measure a bushel? Is it by weight or volume?
great question, Fiona. So you get paid by weight, but farmers think about volume by bushel. So and your inspection is probably going to be based on bushel. And how much is a bushel? It depends on the crop. So a bushel of corn weighs 56 pounds. A bushel of soybeans weighs 60. That's about as much as I can tell you. I don't know why the difference. So maybe Mallory can jump in on that.
No, I just want to add real quick is this is one of the areas on the mass balance where shrink can happen, because if you're measuring your harvest in bushel in your yield monitor, it's going to be at the percentage weight, like the percentage moisture that is in that kernel is going to be adding to the weight. So you're going to register more bushel than you would have if you dried it down in the bin. So that's the shrink component, where your number of kernels didn't change, but because bushel is a weight measurement, it can change across the season.
Good. Am I frozen?
You might. Oh, there you go.
I'm back.
Now you're good.
I'm back. Good. To answer Sam's question, what's a common hiccup that you see?
Often, breaking that chain, maybe.
I think often it's for folks that are in transition or have split operations. So where this is important is you have to create very clear boundaries between organic and non-organic production. Whether that's, hey, we're a farm and not all of the farms or fields are appropriate for organic certification, or we can't transition some farms to organic because they're rented, whatever it might be. There may be lots of good reasons why a farm isn't 100% organic. In that case, we have to keep really, really good records about what happened on organic and what happened on conventional, and be clear that they're separate. So now we're talking about the purge for harvesting, but that break has to be true anytime I'm entering that field. So cleaning equipment, if I do a tillage pass, fall or spring, that equipment has to be cleaned when it moves between those fields. If I'm handling product, moving it between, let's say with a grain cart or a semi truck, not even harvesting, that has to also be separated. So what we're looking for in that case is a clean out log. And so a good way to do this is in my field records, and you could do this on your whiteboard by just changing the color of your field. You could do this in your spiral notebook by like highlighting that field. Or in FarmFlow, we automate it, but you want to be making a record of anytime something's happening between organic and transition or organic and chemical, that there's a clean out, and that's often missed.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Let me pose kind of a follow-up question from Fiona, which is she's asking about measuring bushels. Can she just be consistent whether she measures bushels by volume or weight? And as long as she's consistent, that's fine? Or
Yeah.
what do we need? Okay.
Yep. We want consistency and be able to explain the logic. So
Okay.
if you say, hey, we're gonna go off of weight, and here's how we're measuring it, and it's being measured consistently in all these different ways, great. We're gonna go off
Right.
of bushels, that's fine.
So maybe back to almost what Mallory said in the beginning, which is the NOP regulations do not say how to keep your records. You got to do weight, you got to do volume. It's just, hey, we got to be able to audit them. And however you keep them, if we can audit them and show traceability, we're good.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll call out one last X factor, which is your inspector is an independent contractor. So they are separate than your certifier. Your certifier is independent of them. So in all these points, there's an element of interpretation that happens. So having had, 30 different inspectors, 25 different inspectors over the years, there are some who are classic sticklers, and there are some who don't know what a soybean looks like, right? So the onus is really on the farmer then to both educate the inspector and to sort of be defensive or to be protective. That in that moment of inspection, it should be a collaborative, it should be not a combative moment, but you should be prepared to explain anything that's happening on your farm, because the person that's inspecting your farm may or may not have context. They may be from California and all of a sudden they're here in Wisconsin or vice versa, and so you want to be able to explain why things happen and how they happen too. And that goes a little bit beyond just the records, but it's something to keep in mind.
We've got a few minutes left here. Let me just check in. Mallory, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I switched internet, so I'm on my hotspot now. I'm good.
Yeah, just, I don't know, kind of by way of closing, I'm curious to ask, how has your work as an organic inspector kind of informed your current work as an organic advisor?
Yeah, so the work that I did as an inspector has been incredibly helpful to the work that I do at OATS, the Organic Agronomy Training Service, because it's informed having conversations like this, being able to include record keeping best practices in the materials that we create for ag advisor education. But it's also shown me that farms themselves are in need of more one-on-one technical assistance. And so I've been encouraging other ag advisors to add record keeping services to their portfolio. And then I myself have also started offering record keeping services directly to farms that are looking to offload that activity from their plate, to have somebody who knows the certification system, knows the record keeping system, and can take care of that.
Yep.
So there's definitely a business opportunity there.
Okay. And then, so whether a farmer keeps their own records, whether they contact someone like Mallory, or maybe they work with Matthew's FarmFlow. Matthew, if people want to learn more about FarmFlow, what's the next step, or what's next for FarmFlow? Yeah.
Yeah, great. So two things. Go to tryfarmflow.com. The DIY kit, so how to make one of these whiteboards yourself, is on there. You can do it for free. Free 99. It's $1 million idea that costs you zero dollars. And then the app that I demonstrated today, we are still launching it as a beta tool. So we're looking for 3 to 5 farmers to try it out this fall. And so there's also a sign up page on that website where you can sign up, and we want just a small number of folks to try it out, give us feedback, and we're going to continue improving it over the winter and then roll out for next spring. So
neat.
Check it out.
I put the link there in the chat if like Matthew was saying, beta testing. So if that's something you or your clients are interested in, you can kind of get in touch with them there on that link. Yeah, I think that's starting to wrap us up. Like I say, when we start talking agriculture, an hour flies by. Mallory and Matthew, thank you so much for taking the time to share your experience with us today. Yeah, appreciate it.
Glad to be with you.
Yeah. Let's see, before y'all leave your
Thanks for
desks,
having me.
yeah, I appreciate you guys. If you could take just a moment to fill out our evaluation, and we'll put that link in the chat there, and it'll be just below. You can see Mallory's website there. But if you would take, I think it takes about 53.5 seconds, I time myself, and your opinion will really help us improve these calls. So feel free to follow that. Let me put it in the chat now. I believe that's it. Yeah, great, right there. That'll help us out. Okay, so this is the fourth episode of the Organic Advisor Call Series, and I hope that I'll have the pleasure of your company on the next episode, which is Tuesday, September 16th, and our topic will be biological amendments, in-furrow fertility, and planting best practices. And I hope you've appreciated Matthew and Mallory's experience as guests, and I'm really excited for our guests for that episode. We'll be speaking with a university researcher and an industry researcher. I believe it's Connor Sybil and Brett, I forget Brett's last name. But anyhow, they'll share what they're learning in their research and demo plots about biologicals, which is something that there's a lot of hype about, but we want to make sure that hype is kind of earned. And so until then, I wish you a safe summer and just enough rain. And thanks a lot for tuning in. Appreciate it.